Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. You are all on mute, including our panelists. If all attendees could remain on mute, and panelists, please feel free to unmute yourselves as you see fit and when you're speaking. This session is being recorded and will be posted on our social media channels and our YouTube channel after this session if you'd like to catch up or share it with other people if you found this session to be beneficial. All participants will be taking questions from people in the audience, so please submit any questions and please feel free to have any discussion via the chat facility in Zoom. We're holding this special community briefing following the Prime Minister's press conference yesterday and his statement in the House of Commons today, which outlined the government's plan for lifting the lockdown measures. The slight easing of restrictions that the Prime Minister announced were for England only, and the Welsh and Scottish governments have announced their own updates to the lockdown measures in their respective countries. We'll therefore be hearing from Haroon Khan, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain, who'll be setting out what this means in a national context, and then from Allah from the Muslim Council of Wales, who will be discussing what this means for Wales, and Asim from Scotland. We'll then be hearing from Sheikh Fahimul Anam from the British Board of Scholars and Imams, Khalid Moeed from the Muslim Lawyers Pro Bono Group, and Dr. Wajid Akhtar from the British Islamic Medical Association. All of our panelists, like I mentioned, will be answering questions, so please submit any questions clearly labelled with who the via the chat facility. We'll now start with a recitation of the Quran by Brother Lamine.
Rajim Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa salim. May Allah make it easy for me and all of you who are listening to me. Just to remind brothers and sisters that I'm going to read ala riwayat Warsh and Nafi. So there might be some slight changes that people are used to hear from. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahmanir Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ولقد آتيناك سبعا من المثاني والقرآن العظيم. لا تمدن عينيك إلى ما متعنا به أزواجا منهم ولا تحزن عليهم وخفض جناحك للمؤمنين وقل إني أنا النذير المبين كما أنزلنا على المقتسمين الذين جعلوا القرآن عيدين فوربك لنسألنهم أجمعين عما كانوا يعملون فاصدع بما تؤمر وأعرض عن المشركين إنا كفيناك المستهزئين الذين يجعلون مع الله إلها آخر فسوف يعلمون ولقد نعلم أنك يضيق صدرك بما يقولون فسبح بحمد ربك وكن من الساجدين واعبد ربك حتى ياتيك اليقين صدق الله العظيم وبلغ رسوله الكريم.
Thank you so much for that recitation. We'll now start with Brother Haroon Khan, Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain.
Thanks, Zainab. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu wa salamu ala Rasulil Kareem. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks once again for joining us on this program, which has been running virtually every week since the lockdown started in the UK, where the Muslim Council of Britain has been providing and facilitating updates and discussion on relevant topics relevant to our communities across the UK, to help you and guide you through this very difficult and challenging period that we're facing as communities within the UK. As most of you will be aware, some of you would have heard the speech by the statement given by the Prime Minister yesterday evening, or you would have caught up with some of the news and messages that are going around at the moment. So following yesterday's announcement, there's been further a document released today by the government outlining further details about the easing of some of the lockdown restrictions. So we're still waiting on actual details. There was nothing specific, for example, mentioning initially about Eid. We know for now, right now, that mosques are not included in the easing of the lockdown. So there probably won't be any mosque around the UK. There's been no easing of that restriction, and mosques will remain closed right up until, from what we know today, depending on what the government mentioned around step 3, which is until the 1st of June, if I'm correct. So, or was it July? I'm sorry, I'm just getting the two mixed up. So, but anyway, we know it's definitely not before Eid. So we know that our communities are disproportionately affected. There's no question about this. I think in terms of deaths, very sadly, we've lost many people, especially from BME communities, BAME communities, and collectively within that, the Muslim communities. So many of us have lost loved ones through this pandemic, and there are a number of different inquiries going on. There isn't an official public inquiry as such, but the government has initiated an investigation into this. Alongside that, the Labour Party is also facilitating a similar kind of investigation into the impacts of this, and we'll keep you posted as we know more, as more news comes out on this. But the main thing which we can reiterate is to really strictly adhere to the government's guidance around social distancing, around not going out and meeting people. There's limited numbers, all the details are there now around the kinds of activity that can take place in terms of work and in terms of going out to meet people. And I think what's been said is that obviously the exercising has been relaxed, so people can go out as often as they want for exercising. But then only one person from a household can meet another person, say, for example, in the open space in a park, and that's it. It's not about groups of families going out, meeting other groups of families in the park. There's no mention of that whatsoever. So we need to be really, really careful on this. Alhamdulillah, we have all celebrated Ramadan in our homes this year. And I think, we've become accustomed to it. It's not the best situation for us. Many of us want to be in the masajid, in the mosques. But unfortunately, Allah hasn't chosen that for us this time around. And hence we are confined to our homes to make the best of what we can with Ramadan at home. And it will be Eid at home, unquestionably. So we need to think about this. And inshallah, the MCB will provide some guidance and assistance probably next week, in a few days' time. By next week's briefing, we'll give you a bit more guidance on that and how we should be doing that. But that's what we need to be thinking ahead for. And also we know about, Prime Minister announced about schools opening up, so starting with the early years. And this is most likely to take place on the 1st of June, which would also probably mean that some madrasas will be looking at this as well. So I would advise them to follow the same kind of guidelines that are being put out for schools, to make sure that they meet all of the requirements that need to be in place, all the stages that need to be in place, all the restrictions that need to be in place for that to happen safely for everyone. And I think I've already covered with families and so on. So I think I'll stop there now, inshallah. And I think if you have specific questions to pose to us, you can put them in the chat box, and then we'll try and address them within this program as best as possible, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Haroon. We'll now have Ala Khandakji from the Muslim Council of Wales, who will discuss the measures that have been set out by the Welsh Government.
Assalamu alaikum, Jazakallah khair for having me here today. So the Welsh Government, the First Minister addressed Wales on Friday, and the message wasn't drastically different from what it was before, which was to stay home, protect the NHS and save lives, which I think made it a little bit easier for us in Wales on how we move forward, as there was less ambiguity with the messaging. It was difficult for everyone to hear, as we can all probably share that we do want to go back to our normal lives, but everyone is being quite patient. I was asked to look at how mosques are and individuals in the community were dealing with this information in Wales. We had an all Wales meeting yesterday, and everyone knows is pained. Everyone's being patient and understanding the need for us to stay home, and it's all about protecting our loved ones at the end of the day. What we are using this opportunity or this gift of time is to try and better our organisation. So organising ourselves to be ready for when the time comes to reopen our mosques. And if it comes before a vaccine is available, we need to be mindful that our communities are at higher risk. So we want to make sure that we have the right approach going forward, and all our masajid are unified in those principles and approach, and are equipped. So that's through training and through equipment and through principles, inshallah. The biggest concern coming forward at the moment, or the most immediate challenge, is how we deal with Eid. As Brother Haroon already said, it's going to be Eid at home. So how do we keep those spirits high as much as we can? And how do we just spiritually and mentally and emotionally still have that connection with Eid and with the masajid? And the challenge of how do we look after our youth for not going out in another few weeks' time? How do we prevent them from bringing in risks into the homes and looking after their needs? So that's where we are at the moment with it. We are looking at the training and some guidance, probably with MCB. For Eid and with the training, inshallah. So that's everything I can say from Wales. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much. If I can now ask Asim Sheikh from the Muslim Council of Scotland to provide an update on what the First Minister of Scotland set out.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for having me on here to give an update on what is happening in Scotland. Similarly to what Sister Allah said in Wales, there's not been much of a change in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon, our First Minister, came to give an announcement on Saturday, and also yesterday, giving the advice of the same thing. We're locked down for another 3 weeks. There's no loosening of the rules. You are allowed to go out once more to exercise, rather than just once a day. But generally, nothing has changed from what we had previously, which does mean that we'll be at home, as both Brother Haroon and Sister Allah have said, that we'll be having Eid at home. The masjids in Scotland have been really understanding so far. There hasn't been too much kickback from any of them. Everyone has been on the same page, alhamdulillah. It's been really good to have that feeling. Over the course of the pandemic as well, I know there was issues with cremation, but we didn't have that problem up here. We'd already had the safeguards in place. We're still in contact with the government on a daily basis, and a number of national bodies discussing all the various issues that we have. The masajid here are unlikely to open before July. I think July the 4th was mentioned to me earlier on. And as we've been hearing before, there will be significant social distancing issues to adhere to. So we'll have to work together MCB, MCW, I think everyone will have to come together to have a unified position on how masjids will be able to reopen. I think the one concern and the one area of focus which a lot of people have been concerned with in Scotland is the disproportionate impact on the ethnic minority communities. The rate of deaths has been significantly higher in Scotland in the BAME communities. But saying that, alhamdulillah, we've managed, as a Muslim community up here, we've managed to stay ahead of the curve. I've not seen anywhere near the horrendous numbers the data or the modelling pre-lockdown was suggesting. So, alhamdulillah, we've been quite lucky up here. But like I was saying before, one of the main issues that the masajid are worrying about is funding. And will they be able to survive a prolonged lockdown, which I think we'll need to have discussions with the government once again to see if there's anything that will be available going forward. The other challenge is in ensuring that everyone understands the importance and reassuring everybody to keep with the lockdown and not try and break the rules. I've been hearing that people are wanting to go to parks and so on and so forth to try and read Eid Salah, which is not going to be possible. You know, the social distancing issues in the park and so on and so forth will, in my opinion, be a total disaster. So it's not something that MCS will be promoting or suggesting that any of the masajid do. The exit strategy from the COVID-19 problem is going to be a very tricky one. How do we get out of this? And again, it's something that MCS will be in conversation with the government and MCB and the MCW on how we can all work together to try and pull us out together at the same pace. So from there, there's other than that, there's not really much else to report. I know there's quite a lot to report there, but there's nothing more else for me to add apart from Nicola Sturgeon is asking us to stay inside for another 3 weeks and try and be as strict as we can, and just to support our affiliates and the Muslim community in Scotland. Thank you very much. Jazakallah.
Thank you so much, Asim. I'm now going to call on Sheikh Fahim Al-Anam from the British Board of Scholars and Imams to discuss this from a scholarly perspective.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم أكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم وارزقنا حلاوة الإيمان واستقل الإخلاص في كل حال أما بعد. Alhamdulillah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled us to fast in this month of Ramadan in our lifetime. Although it is a unique circumstance, but yet we are able to fast and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I guess it wasn't an easy decision for the Imams and scholars to actually close down the mosques. And because mosques are the central point in our life. For the Muslim community, mosque is the central point. Mosque guides people, navigates people. And to close down the mosques, you know, it wasn't an easy decision. But alhamdulillah, you know, by the will of Allah, I mean, it was a kind of collective decision by the majority scholars, and then looking at the harm and looking at the circumstance, it was decided to sort of close down. Now, of course, we closed down the mosques before Ramadan, so we didn't feel so much. But when the Ramadan came, it is a completely different experience, because Ramadan is a collective experience. And what brings us together, it is the presence of mosques. And subhanAllah, you know, we feel it when we go to the mosque, of course, in our day-to-day life, but in particular in Ramadan. And this what gives us the feeling of Ramadan that we are actually fasting. And this what we had to collectively decide from the British Board of Scholars and Imams, as well as other bodies and other Imams and scholars that decided to actually sort of close down the mosques. Now, since the lockdown, nothing has changed. And of course, BBSI, or the British Board of Scholars and Imams, we have been providing guidance documents on various issues before Ramadan and during Ramadan. And I guess people are now quite used to sort of fasting, staying at home. So whatever issues people were facing, more or less, I guess people have kind of got used to it, and they're able to continue with that, you know. Now, even though after yesterday's announcement, to be honest, nothing has changed in a significant way. If we look at the core messages, staying at home, observing social distances, which were the main reasons why we also had to close down the mosques, you know, because of the social distancing. Because when we go to the mosque, it brings us together, and it's difficult for us to maintain that distance. And that can cause or can spread the virus. And because of that harm, we decided, the Imams and scholars collectively decided to close down the mosques, you know. So therefore, after passing this period and after sort of listening to the announcement yesterday, nothing significantly changed in terms of the core messages, staying at home and observing social distances. So therefore, the decision continues. As already been spoken by and mentioned by other speakers, that in the month of Ramadan, the mosque will remain closed. All the masajid will remain closed. Now, and I guess whatever in terms of from a fiqh perspective, whatever we need to know and whatever we need to observe, people are more or less used to it. I guess what will be new in terms of Muslim community facing under the lockdown is the Eid. And it is a day of celebration. And Eid, when we come out, when we go out, when we meet with others, this is what actually makes us feel that, you know, we are actually celebrating collectively, whether as community or as families. And it is very likely that, of course, you know, we will be doing our Eid at home. What this also this also poses other challenges in terms of not just celebrating Eid, but also in terms of Salatul Eid. Because one thing we all do, that men, women, everyone, that, you know, on the day of Eid, the first thing we do, we go out and we offer our Salah. So therefore, how are we going to offer our Salah on the day of Eid under the lockdown? So I'll just briefly mention 1 or 2 points, and then I'll briefly mention some from a spiritual perspective, a few other points, and then inshallah I'll finish off. In terms of offering our Salatul Eid at home, there are different opinions, and as we know, with most of the sort of ahkam, there are always different opinions, which are blessings, you know. So from a Hanafi perspective, it is not allowed to offer Salatul Eid at home, because it is a collective exercise, collective practice, collective ibadah, just like Jum'ah. However, from a Shafi'i madhab and also other madahib, they permit the performance of Salatul Eid at home. According to Imam al-Nawawi, that Ashharul Ara al-Ijaza li Salatul Eid fil Bayt, that in particular Shafi'i madhab, they allow people to offer Salatul Eid at home individually or collectively, as well as other madahib. Now, as I mentioned, the Hanafi madhab don't actually sort of allow that. So therefore, under the current circumstance, what can we do? Should we pray at home? Eid prayer, I mean, of course, in a Hanafi madhab, you know, if you miss the Salatul Eid with the congregation, then you offer Salatul Duha, the morning prayer, and by yourself at home or at the mosque, you know. So I guess, yes, there are people who will be observing or following the madhahib strictly, and they are right to do so. At the same time, some people may be a little bit more flexible. Under the given circumstance, you know, yes, let people sort of consult their scholars and go according to their sort of imams and scholars. But those opinions are there, both opinions are there in terms of allowing and not allowing. Perhaps maybe for, can you hear me?
Yes, please continue.
Something happened and my screen got changed. Okay, right. So right. In any case, inshallah, what I would suggest that, you know, in the current circumstances under the lockdown, those of us who can actually lead Jamaat prayers at home, maybe they can do so. And of course, if they strictly observe any madhab, then it's their prerogative, and they don't have to, On the other hand, those of us who may not be able to lead salah, a Jamaat prayer, because not everyone is in the same position, they don't have to. So there is not that obligation, under this current circumstance, the obligation is lifted, so therefore they don't need to worry about it. They perhaps can offer 2 rakat Salatul Duha, inshallah. So, and of course, if there are other questions that we can take later. Looking at it from a spiritual perspective, subhanallah, when we look outside, all the worldly doors are closed. Shops are closed, businesses are closed, everything is closed. But at the same time, all the heavenly doors are open. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has opened up all the heavenly doors. Under no circumstance, under no lockdown, we will be restricted, we will be deprived from the blessings and the virtues and the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, let us not forget that our doors of heaven is open for us. And therefore, we need to focus on that, despite the fact that we are going through this difficulty. But let us not forget the highest objective of Ramadan. And what we want to target, what we want to achieve in this month of Ramadan, it is taqwa. God consciousness, God mindfulness, that we increase our inner state, inner feeling, inner conscience of having the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that door is open for us. And if we want to attain taqwa in our life, what we need Al-Quran. Because Quran connects us with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, as we know that the month of Ramadan is special, not just because it is a month of Ramadan, but it is because Allah has prescribed fasting in this month. So it is special. Allah has opened up the doors of Jannah, closed the doors of Jahannam. But at the same time, Ramadan and Siyam is being elevated because of Al-Quran, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed the Quran. Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. Allah revealed the Quran in the month of Ramadan, and in particular in the last 10 days. As we know that Laylatul Qadr, when the Quran was revealed, it is in the last 10 days. And as we know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to prepare himself for the last 10 days. So therefore, let us all sort of prepare ourselves for the last 10 days. And in the last 10 days, what we need to do, we need to be focused, and we need to sort of have a practical plan for our sort of ibadah. And I will say, if we can actually focus on as-sawm, as-salah, at-tilawa, at-tawbah, al-istighfar, wa-du'a. And what I mean by these are beautiful way to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to attain taqwa in our life. So therefore, of course, Siyam is ongoing. Inshallah, we will continue with that, Now, Salah, of course, along with our 5 daily prayers, let us focus on the nightly prayers. That is most important, because what we can do in our nightly prayers, including our Faraid prayers and our Tarawih prayers and our Tahajjud, Qiyamul Layl, and this is what we need to focus on, that we need to sort of prepare ourselves for the last 10 days for the Salah and for the Tilawah and for the Quran. And subhanallah, this is the best moment, this is the best opportunity for us to engage with the Quran and connect ourselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, there are so many virtues, and you all know about, even if you look at the Laylatul Qadr, better than 1,000 nights, and so forth and so forth, we all know those things. But what we need to do, we need to make sure that, we have some rest during the daytime, that we are physically fit, we have the energy that we can stand up and we can recite the Quran and we can offer our salah and we can talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what is needed. This is what will actually help us to attain taqwa. Doors are closed, worldly doors are closed, but heavenly doors are open. So therefore, inshallah, if we can prepare ourselves during the daytime, in the nighttime, make sure that, our salah is done with khushu'. Our salah is done with longer surahs, with contemplation, with engagement. If necessary, recite the meaning beforehand, the verses or the surah that you will read. And also, no rush. Take your time. It is reported that Abu Hanifa used to spend the night just reciting فَمَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَوَقَانَا عَذَابَ السَّمُومِ that Allah has favored upon us, and Allah has protected us from the punishment of hellfire. And this verse then becomes a dua, Allahumma munna alayna wa qina adhab as-samum. When we recite Surah Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, say it from the heart. Talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the best time. And then when you say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, oh Allah, show us guide us to the right path. Think about all the problems that we have, and we need to see the right path, So this is where we need to sort of gear ourselves towards that. And believe me, if we can increase our ibadah, our salah, our tilawah, all these things, they go hand in hand together with taqwa. Allah has designed this month of Ramadan as a training month for us, so that we reduce the level of committing sins and we increase our good deeds. Because sins, al-ma'asi and taqwa, they don't go together. Al-a'mal as-salihat, good deeds and taqwa, they go together. So inshallah, I hope and pray that, we are able to, and of course, don't forget, as we know, that we can't afford to miss seeking tawbah or seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what we need to make sure that we try our best by the end of the month, that we secure guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will enable us to attain taqwa, which is the highest objective for the month of Ramadan, inshallah.
Thank you so much for that, Sheikh. That was really, really useful insight as to how we can make the most out of the remaining few days of Ramadan. There have been loads of comments and questions come through the chat facility. Thank you so much. Please continue to send those in. There are a number of questions that I will ask Dr. Wajid Akhtar, who is our final speaker from the British Islamic Medical Association, after his session, because I believe they're best answered by him from a medical perspective. But I would just like to direct one question at Haroon from the MCB. Based on what the government has said so far, is Eid in the park likely? There have been lots of questions about this, and based on the government guidance so far, is it permissible for families to gather in parks for Eid, based on what Boris Johnson has said today and yesterday?
No, not from what we can see at the moment. It's not permissible. So I think I said at the beginning, if people joined a bit later, only one person from a household can meet someone else from another family outdoors at distance. So there's no clarification about families going out as groups, meeting other groups. So, obviously they don't mention Eid specifically, but for the purpose of just going out, even in the public space, it's not permissible.
Thank you so much. And just to highlight that the MCB will be producing, as Haroon mentioned, guidance for Muslims and masajid later on when the time is appropriate. I'm now going to ask Brother Khalid Moeed from the Muslim Lawyers Pro Bono group to join and speak to us.
Yes, Muslim Lawyers Pro Bono Group is an initiative that was launched recently. I am a part of that group. I am a solicitor. Can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me. So I'm a solicitor specializing in charity law and dispute resolution. I'm also a committee member of my local mosque, which is Masjid Aisha, Tottenham. So what I'm about to tell you in terms of a legal update, much of that also applies to me in the way that the masjid that I'm a part of, how we also operate, inshallah. There is a paper which I've written with some practical tips and guidance for charity trustees, which will be circulated after the talk, inshallah. It has my contact details. You should be able to contact me as well. So the starting point is to go to the gov.uk paper, which the government has circulated today. It's called Our Plan to Rebuild, the UK government's COVID-19 recovery strategy. And if you go to section 4, and this is the document where in section 4 where it's titled Our Roadmap to Lift Restrictions Step by Step. So the step 1 comes into play from this Wednesday. Then there is this step 2, which is the phased return for early years settings in schools. And that's where some of the madrasas and Islamic schools they will need to look at the government guidelines. Step 3 is the one that we are most interested in, and this step 3 is not going to be earlier than 4th of July. So 4th of July, and obviously that is also subject to various conditions. So the government has set out a number of tests, and the government has said that it's going to be based on further detailed scientific advice. Now this step 4 is the one that relates to mosques or places of worship. It relates to other public places such as cinemas. So the government is envisaging that if everything else is fine and it's safe, then places of worship may be able to open from 4th of July. But I would not get too excited, because if you read the government paper, and I'm going to quote this, and this is the important part of the paper, where it says they should also meet the COVID-19 secure guidelines. Some venues which are by design crowded and where it may prove difficult to enact distancing may still not be able to reopen safely at this point, or may be able to open safely only in part. So reading some of that, it sounds like that it may apply to our masajid, because of the way that we stand in congregation shoulder to shoulder, the 2 meter distance, social distancing, if that is still applicable. So I think what I would say for trustees is to look out for guidance from MCB, and for MCB is to also look at what the other faith groups are doing, such as churches and synagogues. And I would say, this is my personal opinion, that mosques are probably more vulnerable, because of the way that when we do sujood, we put our forehead, our nose on the carpet, and if somebody has sneezed on that carpet, and if there is virus on the carpet, so there is a risk of contamination, risk of contracting is probably far more than churches and than synagogues. So in that respect, what the advice that I could give to trustees, because I know in a lot of the mosques, the committee members will come under pressure, the congregations will want the mosques to be reopened, but it's ultimately a responsibility, it's a legal responsibility of trustees to ensure that they follow health and safety legislation, that they've carried out a proper risk assessment, and only when it is safe should we reopen the mosques. So that is as far as the mosque reopening is concerned. The question about whether we can pray in parks, I think that's already been covered. Now, what I want to cover in the next part of my presentation is the legal responsibilities of trustees. While we are under lockdown, we are not able to meet physically. So for example, AGMs and other meetings, and there are continuing legal obligations, for example, submitting annual returns and annual accounts with the Charity Commission. So the Charity Commission is taking quite a flexible approach, because it understands that in charities, the trustees are not able to meet physically. And so if you have deadlines coming up, the Charity Commission, there is an email address. You can email that address if you need an extension to file your annual return and your annual accounts. The email address is filingextension@charitycommission.gov.uk. I'll repeat that. It's filingextension@charitycommission.gov.uk. If you need an extension to file your annual accounts and returns, you should include the charity's name and the registration number. And the Charity Commission is going to take a flexible approach, and trustees are not going to be expected to follow the procedures to the letter of the law at this time. Where possible, trustees should consider using video conferencing and also telephone conferencing to have the meetings that they perhaps need to have. Your governing document will sometimes stipulate a certain number of meetings that you need to have. Now, there is some legal authority on having meetings via video conferencing, which says that if you meet, if you have a meeting using video conferencing, such as the one that we're doing today, it's actually the same as being present in a physical meeting. Okay, so even if the governing document of your charity does not specifically rule out video meetings, the trustees should be able to convene meetings via video conferencing apps. Most modern governing documents, hello, is there a problem?
No, please continue.
Okay, so I was just saying, so video conferencing, if you have meetings, it's as if you're in a physical meeting. The only thing is you have to look at your governing document if it does not specifically rule it out. Most modern governing documents should also permit telephone-only meetings. If they do not, it's my view that the trustees should be able to conduct meetings via telephone and make valid decisions. And if anybody wants to challenge the validity of those decisions made via telephone or video meetings, it's unlikely that the Charity Commission would give consent for any court proceedings. So hopefully the Charity Commission is going to be on your side. So this is something obviously for trustees, how they continue to meet their obligations, how they continue to have meetings and make decisions while we're in lockdown. There's also something else that I want to, another point I want to make. Mosques, Islamic organizations, institutions may want to take part in the in efforts to help people affected by coronavirus. What I would simply say is that you need to check your governing document and what your the purpose for which your charity has been set up. And so this is a legal question. And with most mosques, they should be able to take part in this work because it is part of our religion, you know, as part of pastoral work, helping people in need. So for most mosques and Islamic institutions, it should be possible. And also those charities that have objects such as alleviation of poverty, relief of the elderly, the advancement of health, or the advancement of education. If you have those kind of quite broad objects, you should be fine. But if you still find that your governing document doesn't allow you to take part in this work and you're quite keen, then it is possible to change the objects and then send that through to the Charity Commission. And you should have convene a meeting either using telephone or video conferencing facility to make that decision. And please make sure that you have unrestricted funds, because if there are restricted funds for specific purposes, then obviously you cannot touch that and redirect it elsewhere. So these are all legal questions. And finally, just want to touch on funding that's available for charities, because I know many of the masajid, while the mosques have been closed for now nearly 2 months, the Friday collections have stopped. The government did announce on the 8th of April, you know, quite a whopping figure of £750 million package of support of funding for charities. I've not seen any further kind of guidelines in terms of how that's allocated. I have the headline figures. 370 million is being distributed through the National Lottery Community Fund, and also another 360 million is being allocated through central government departments. There is also lots of other funders who are funding and providing emergency funding. One example is the Barclays Foundation. They've announced a community aid package of £100 million to help charities working to help those impacted by COVID-19. And there is also a full list of funding sources which can be accessed via the Charity Bank website. So if you just put in Charity Bank in Google, it will come up and there is a list. And also in the paper that I've done, there is a link to the Charity Bank website. You can have a look at that. And there are lots of funding sources where organizations would be able to tap into. And finally, just some practical guidelines. I think we should use this opportunity to move online if you haven't done already. Set up a WhatsApp group for your mosque or Islamic organization with your members of the congregation. A Facebook page is a must, and also donations. You can do that online. Launch Good. I'm sure you've seen. There is a competition almost on a daily basis. You can win $5,000. Our mosque is taking part next Sunday. So there is stuff that is still going on. And I think it's important for trustees, even though the mosques, the doors are closed, it's important to show that some activities are still ongoing. For example, our mosque has been giving iftar from the first day of Ramadan for people to, it's a takeaway iftar, Muslims and non-Muslims living in the area to come and collect. And that's really been something that's been appreciated across the board locally. So I'll stop it there, inshallah, and any questions or anything like that, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so much. We are quickly running out of time, so I'll move on to our next speaker. But just to note that the document that Khalid referenced and the website of the Muslim Lawyers Pro Bono Group has been put in the chat facility, so I will put it back in there as well for anyone who missed that and wants to get more information. We'll now have Brother Dr. Wajid Akhtar from the British Islamic Medical Association to speak to us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for giving me the opportunity to say a few words. I've been seeing the messages on the chat box, and they do make for interesting reading. There are statements saying that why hasn't the MCB done anything? There are statements saying that the MCB has forced the mosque to close. There's statements saying that we should do X and we should do Y, and we're going to go and pray in the Eid. We're going to pray in the park anyway, whether you say it or you don't. So I want to address these points because I think that they do deserve a discussion, and it shows that there is maybe a communication gap. I'm not an exec member of the MCB. I'm actually part of the British Islamic Medical Association, but we're working, all of us working closely together, MCW, MCS, MCB, lawyers, publicity groups, economic sections, different parts of the Muslim community, all working together, inshallah. We've been working non-stop for the last 5 or 6 weeks for the sake of the Muslim community and to do everything that we can to protect and serve the interests of the Muslim community. So you need to know this. If you don't know it, you need to know that people have been working until 2 o'clock in the morning, then waking up and working even at suhoor time, then waking up and then working again on this issue on top of their jobs, and some of them are frontline workers as well. Okay, they've been putting in the effort and the time and the energy. In fact, the guidance that's being produced by the MCB is being used by other countries. That's the quality of the level of guidance. We're guiding the people, the brothers and sisters in America or Canada or India or Kenya and Malaysia. They're taking our advice and guidance as well. So what is actually going on? Brothers and sisters, the issue is this. From a medical point of view, I can understand that everyone feels that there is confusion. It's what are we supposed to do? I mean, it's in the newspapers. People are having a go at the government. What's the government doing? This, it's all confused. People have a go at Prime Minister. People having a go at MCB. People having a go at everyone. Everyone is wondering, what am I going to do? Because I don't know what to do. And the truthful answer is that no one knows 100% what to do. No one knows. In this situation, we're in a situation which we're not sure. The virus is changing. The situation is changing. Our ability to adapt to it is changing. The economic situation is changing. The environment is changing. Everything is changing all the time. So because when you're in this confusing situation, what happens is that it's very difficult for anyone to give very clear-cut 1, 2, 3 guidance, because the situation keeps changing. So that 1, 2, 3 will keep changing as well. In addition to that, we are, as you know, we are learning new things as a medical community, but also as a Muslim community. At the beginning of this, they were saying that don't wear masks. Now they're saying maybe we should all be wearing masks. At the beginning of this, we didn't think that the ethnic minorities, which predominantly are Muslims in this country, are being impacted. But now we realize the evidence is there. And now we're even seeing that the virus might be mutating. So there's so many different factors about this. So the confusion is there. It's normal for there to be a little bit of confusion. What can I provide you in terms of answers? Number one, the number one thing that every single Muslim must understand is the second wave. The second wave is not the first wave of the virus, but after the first wave goes down, and then people start to relax and restrictions are eased and people start to take risks that they didn't take before. That's when the majority of people die, not in the first wave, in the second wave. The majority die in the second wave. In all the pandemics that have gone before, the majority die in the second wave. I teach medical history. This is fact. Now, there may be many reasons why that happened, but we have to protect ourselves. The second wave may be coming. So that's something you have to, you cannot, this is Shaitan is going to try and tell us that, look, your sabr has a limit. It's time, now it's time to just forget it now. And we all feel like that, we're human beings. But we have to be very careful. Please protect yourself and your families and the public from the second wave. Everyone has to do that. And in this, we have to find a balance though, because we can't just stay in our house until the vaccine comes, right? That's not what we're saying. We will not, no one's even saying that let's keep the mosques closed until the vaccine comes. No one's even saying this. There is a balance between doing what's the best for the public health and by trying to continue with normality. Inshallah, how do we find that balance? It's a difficult one. We have to do certain things. So number one, there will be guidance coming out on how we can prepare our masajid to when they open. It seems that it might be around July time, inshallah. There will be guidance saying when they open, how will we open? Step-by-step guidance. We actually have prepared this guidance ready, but if we put it out, it looks like we're encouraging the mosques to open. We're going to also adjust the guidance, improve the guidance, inshallah, but there will be step-by-step guidance. There will, inshallah, be training as well to the mosques on what to do from a legal point of view, on what to do from a medical point of view, what to do from a PPE point of view, all these things that we can, inshallah, try to keep opening in the best way possible. There are already in place financial support mechanism that is being put in place. There's a Support Our Mosques campaign that's ready there to support our mosques, inshallah. If you're not on it, go to supportourmosques.com, put your mosque on it, start fundraising. Let's make them financially secure, inshallah. There will also be guidance for the individual Muslims and for the Muslim community. It's not just about the masajid, it's about the weddings, it's about the parties, it's about meeting with friends and family. All this guidance, inshallah, will come out at the right time. And it is prepared and it's being adjusted, inshallah, as we speak. But we need our community to be on our side, inshallah, to understand that it's a difficult balance. And as we know, the guidance is very clear that the mosque, right now, what the government is saying is the mosques are not going to open right now. There's a question on Eid. There's a question on, can we somehow, using what's being told right now, going out in the parks or exercising or meeting one person, meeting from another person, can we use this somehow to make Eid in the park work or make Eid work? Medically, we'll be honest and say that this looks very, very unlikely. There are discussions going on at a local level with your local councillors, local government. There's discussions going on for further clarification. There are discussions, people are giving ideas and advice. And of course, every single opportunity will be looked at. We're not just, I think the impression that people are getting is that, we're just looking for the easy way out. Just cancel everything. Cancel Eid, cancel Hajj, cancel Umrah, cancel Mosque, as if we're in a cancellation spree. Please have some patience with your brothers and sisters and have some ideas that we're not so shameless that we're going to do that. That's not the kind of people that we all are. So think about it, that we're going to try our best, but the reality is, the likelihood is that it's very difficult that this will be possible under the rules that the government are giving and medically possible. My brothers and sisters, my main message, because I know we're going over time, my main message to you all is this. Please don't think that you can outsmart the virus, right? You're not looking for a legal loophole to try and get something that doesn't have any consequence. Looking for a loophole in a medical pandemic leads to deaths. Trying to use it, please be careful trying to say that, oh, Tesco is open, so the mosque should be open. Mosques are not Tesco's. Please be careful that you don't think you're not playing with the lives of the community. The Prophet ﷺ was walking around the Kaaba, and he pointed at the Kaaba and he said, the sanctity of a believer's blood and property in the sight of Allah is greater than your sanctity. And he was pointing at the Kaaba. So what are we doing then? Yeah, what we're doing is that we want the mosques to open as soon as it's practically possible, inshallah, and we're going to be making sure that we're 100% ready. What we're doing, inshallah, is we want to talk about Eid. We want to examine. We will not leave one stone unturned. I promise you that. Not one stone. Do you think we were up in the phone calls until straight from iftar till tarawih? We were on the phone calls for just fun. We're not going to leave one stone unturned. We're not going to leave one person we're not going to speak to. We're not going to leave one chance. If there's 1% chance, we're going to find it, inshallah. But if there isn't, then we're asking all of you as leaders of the Muslim community to take the responsible decision, inshallah, and to work together, inshallah, to do what's safe and what's right. Because this is what we need for our community. Not one widow, not one orphan should be made because we decided to take a chance that shouldn't have been taken. We decided to go a little bit earlier than we should have done. We're going to go at the right level, at the right pace for our community, inshallah, and we're going to do what's best for our community. And so that's my main message, inshallah, to all of you. The British Islamic Medical Association, along with everyone else around this table, is going to be working they're putting in the time, and they're putting in the hours, and they're putting in the effort, and inshallah by the end of the week there will be and why the end of the week? We could give you just guidance right now. If we wanted to say stop it, we'll just say stop everything right now, because by the end of the week we're going to leave no stone unturned, inshallah, to make sure that we can give the best quality advice and to explore every avenue that is possible, along with the mashayikh, along with the medical experts, along with public health, along with the local authorities, along with everyone. At the end of the day, we have no power over anyone, right? I can't even control what my parents want to do or what my brother or sister does. So this is only giving advice as your brothers and sisters, and it's up to you to take this advice and to implement it in your areas. We understand that some people will implement it in different ways and some people will make different decisions. That is your choice, inshallah. Our job is to give advice, and please don't let the worst thing that can happen, even worse than disagreement over how we do things, is that we disunite, because disunity is the source of destruction, and in a pandemic is a source of even greater problems. So even if you choose to disagree, if you choose that, look, X, Y, and Z of what you're saying, I don't agree with, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Even let's not disunite over it, inshallah, because if we do that, then what happens is going to be much worse than the pandemic. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you so much. I know it is 6:30 and this call is meant to finish at 6:30, but if I could just direct a couple of final questions. One for the Sheikh. Could you please maybe give us some guidance on how we can make the best out of the final 10 nights of Ramadan and how we can make the best out of Eid, please?
What was the second point?
How we can make the best out of the last 10 nights of Ramadan and Eid, given the current circumstances.
I mean, as I mentioned before, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, last 10 days are very special, and therefore, when I say special, I mean that, last 10 days are the days of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very kind of focused way. And this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do i'tikaf every year. As I mentioned, that I think during the daytime, of course, we are fasting, offering salah, doing tilawah and so forth. But nighttime is very, very special, and especially the last 10 days, because Laylatul Qadr falls in the last 10 days, and of course in one of the odd nights. So therefore, as I mentioned before, that if we can actually sort of, and nowadays the nights are short, so therefore instead of sleeping in the night, if we can take some rest in the daytime, and after sort of iftar and everything, having some rest, you know, after Isha and Taraweeh prayer, let us try to sort of for every day, maybe prepare yourself for 4 rak'at, prolonged salawat with a little bit longer tilawah, and also as I mentioned, that whatever you recite, make sure that you read the translation if you don't know Arabic beforehand, so that you can spiritually connect with the tilawah, inshallah. Dua is very important, and of course dua also comes with istighfar and tawbah, so therefore let us not miss that opportunity, especially the latter part of the night, so iftar, Isha, Taraweeh, maybe a short break, and then 2 hours, good 2 hours, tilawah, salah, towards the end, tawbah, istighfar, dua, and try to sort of spend some time and do it with your heart, inshallah, and then of course ending with the suhoor, and if we can maintain that routine for 10 days, we need to be mentally prepared for that we are going to communicate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are going to speak to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore inshallah we can do well. As for the Eid day, of course BBSI, the British Board of Scholars and Imams, we will also be issuing a detailed guidance on that. As it stands, as I mentioned, that it seems like the mosques will remain closed, and therefore therefore people don't have to go out to the mosque and pray. And of course, as I mentioned, that there are different opinions. Hanafi madhab doesn't allow to offer Eid at home. Other madhab allow it. So I would say that we can offer our Salatul Eid, those of us who want and who can at home. Those who cannot, maybe offer Salatul Duha. And at the same time, also plan out the day of Eid. Nowadays, alhamdulillah, technology brings people together. I'm sure many of us and many of you are doing many things over the sort of Zoom and other platforms, So let us sort of again plan out an opportunity to bring our families and relatives together. So let's pray in the morning, let's have lunch, let's communicate with everyone through various sort of conferences, inshallah. And it will be a sort of a virtual live online Eid, inshallah. And I hope that, people are able to utilize whatever we have at our disposal.
Thank you so much. We are out of time, so I will just very quickly thank you to all of our participants for joining us today and for all of your insights and your advice. Thank you to everyone who has attended this call. I hope you found it useful. The MCB over the last week has been consulting both mosques, madrasas, Muslim institutions, and members of Muslim communities across the UK. We've spoken to over 300 institutions and individuals about the lockdown measures and about the impact on masajid of the lockdown measures, which has been really helpful. So thank you to everyone who has taken part. We are looking at this survey results, and we are working with the British Islamic Medical Association, with eminent scholars, with our colleagues in Wales and Scotland to develop guidance both for Muslim communities and masajid and madrasas about reopening, inshallah, in July, if the UK government guidance allows for it. As Dr. Wajid mentioned, this guidance will be published shortly, and once it has been finalised. All of the MCB's resources on the coronavirus are available on our website. That's mcb.org.uk/coronavirus. If anyone has any queries that they would like to direct, please do email COVID @britishima.org. You can also keep up to date with the activities of the MCB, all of the resources we produce, and all of our work with the British Islamic Medical Association, with other organisations like the Muslim Councils of Scotland and Wales, and various sheikhs and imams on our social media pages if you search for Muslim Council. Thank you again to everyone for joining us, and to our panellists. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.